Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Sports. And after looking at Rassie Erasmus's team yesterday, a lot of talk about the different selections that he and the Springbok coaching staff have made. And one thing I want to dive into today is we are seeing the next generation of the Springbok front row. And this is very much Daan Human's sort of prodigy time, in terms of you're looking at Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Asenathi Ntlabakanye, both getting involved this weekend. And I think we are starting to see a couple of new front rowers coming in. We are seeing a bit of a changing of the guard. And when I look at that team and the 2023, the one aspect that excites me probably the most in that entire sort of selection is the two front rows, because we are looking at potentially six front rows who can all get to the next World Cup. We're looking at potentially our four best props for the next World Cup. And what we're hoping to be able to see this weekend is kind of what the combinations start looking like. And are we going to start seeing, these sort of three players or even the two props being used at the same time consistently? Because we've seen Rassie Erasmus very much use combinations. We've seen the Lua Diagi, Eben Etzebeth, the Franco Master, Neyman. Yes, sometimes we've had to adapt due to injuries, but when everybody's been fit, there's often sort of certain combinations that they've stuck with. And that is why we've actually seen lots of records being broken for most starts at lock together, at centers, for example. Most minutes played together as two different wings. So combinations is a very big thing when it comes to the Springboks. And I do think that we're looking at two very, very important combinations moving forward. Whether they'll remain the same, I'm not sure, but I think we are starting to see a bit of a pattern, and I want to kind of sort of dive into that and kind of look at what we've got to work with. Before we do, please do smash the like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Now, to call a spade, Trevor Nyakane, currently 36 years old, will be 38 at the next World Cup, currently out with a long-term injury. You've got Frans Malherbe, will not play rugby once again this year. He's currently 34 years old. He'll be 36 at the next World Cup. Not old for a tight head because they can play at that sort of age, but one of the older players. Vincent Koch will be 37 at the next World Cup. So if you look at sort of 35 and above as kind of being in that red zone, we have got three players, one of them being a bit of a swing prop, but three tight heads really, all in the red. And now is the opportunity to say, well, if they're struggling to make it, given the fact that, two of them are injured, who are our next options? And that's why we're having a look at these ones. So first things first, let's look at the starting trio, and that is it. Right, Thomas du Toit at loosehead. That in itself is quite interesting. He's played most of his rugby in the last few years at tight head, especially since leaving from the Sharks. He's played pretty much only at tight head for Bath. He's been in the Premiership team of the season as tight head as well. So he's very comfortable in that position. He's basically become a tight head. However, starts at loosehead this weekend, and I still think his ability to play on both sides is very valuable to the Boks. And I think at the moment we've obviously got a little bit of a loosehead crisis with no Instuka Zunu, for example, with Bowen Fenter having to come in, Jan-Hendrik Wessels still being quite young. So I think at the moment it's quite easy to sit there and say, you know what, we use Thomas du Toit, we view him as a loosehead because we've got so many options at three. Vincent Koch, Wilco Louw, Asenathi Ntlabakanye, Netley Bashir currently in the squad. Still got Frans Malherbe, still got a Trevor Nyakane down the line as well. So that is our starting front row. The average age of these three players is 30. They're pretty much 30, 30, and 31. So all very similar. So if you look at the next World Cup, they're all kind of in the orange. Malcolm Marx will be 34, Wilco Louw will be 33, and Thomas du Toit will be 32. They won't be old by any means at the next World Cup. It's 372 kgs in that front row, so not small by any means. And there's 117 caps between them. Majority of those coming from Malcolm Marx, but this is an incredibly experienced trio. I mean, Wilco Louw's played lots and lots of games in the Premiership, had a phenomenal UR season. Thomas du Toit was in the team of this. I mean, you've got two players here who are both in the URC and the Premiership team of the season. Malcolm Marx, probably arguably the best hooker in the world. So from a form point of view, you're looking at one of the most front rows out there. So I don't think you can go wrong with this front row. Then you're going to bring on this front row. Now, this is a front row for the future. Even including Oxenchair, who last year was probably the best loosehead in World Rugby. I personally think he actually could have been in line for World Rugby Player of the Year. I thought he had that kind of good of a year. But look at the difference. First of all, it is a bit bigger, courtesy of the mammoth that is Asenathi Ntlabakanye. absolute unit of a man and gets around the park very well. Just 44 caps. 40 caps coming from Oxenchair, 4 caps from Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Uncapped is Asenathi Ntlabakanye. Look at that average age, just 26, which means that this front row will be an average age less than 30 at the next World Cup. I think Oxenchair will be 30 on the dot, if I'm not mistaken, or 31, 32 at the next World Cup. Jan-Hendrik Wessels going to be about 26. Asenathi Ntlabakanye, I think, will be about 27, 28. So this is a very interesting combination because these three can play together for the next 5, 6, 7 years. And Oxenchair obviously could very easily be in this front row, and you could move a Thomas Toy to this front row, and not much changes apart from a lot more experience into this front row. However, Oxenchair, Asenathi Ntlabakanye, there seems to be something brewing there. They're always together at training. They started together against the Barbarians. Now Oxenchair drops to the bench and starts next to Asenathi. Well, coming off the bench, So I think there's a combination growing with this. Very interesting that Jan-Hendrik Wessels is being used as a hooker this weekend. It's the first time the Boks have really used him as an out-and-out hooker. Kind of the first time they use him as a hooker really at all. They actually very much said previously that they just view him as a loose head. And now they're starting to say, cool, we'll use him as a hooker as well. And now it's the first time they've backed him at hooker. So the main thing I want to sort of emphasize is how exciting this is. The fact that we've got 2 front rows, plenty of weight, plenty of power, but they're all going to be around for the next 2 years. This is, I think, what Daan Human is going to be working with, the core, really. Frans Malherbe, we have to see how he comes back from injury. I think Trevor Nyakane's time with the Boks is more or less done. Vincent Koch, currently 35 years old. A decision will need to be made from him. At the moment, Gerard Steenekamp is currently injured. He'll have to try and come back and push through, as we're into Tukukunu. But I think that, Thomas Toy is pretty settled on the squad. I think Oxenchair is pretty settled on the squad. Volkolo, I think, is our starting tight end moving forward. And I think Asenathi Ntlabakanye is kind of the heir to be for your Frans Malherbe, Vincent Koch, Trevor Nyakane. So I think that all 4 of these props go to the next World Cup. And I think if you want to take 5 or 6 props, you're then going to probably, at this stage right now, add in a Gerard Steenekamp, add in an Tukukunu. If you're taking only 5, you're probably adding, for me, probably just a Gerard Steenekamp, using Thomas Toy as that kind of swing prop, assuming it likes Frans Malherbe doesn't make it to the next World Cup, in which case, right now, you probably could go ahead of Asenathi, but I think Asenathi is going to be involved. So the future is here, and the question is, how will they hold up? And, what is this going to mean for us moving forward? How much will these guys get involved? Asenathi Ntlabakanye is uncapped. If he's going to the World Cup as a genuine option to be in the side, they need to put 15 caps next to his name before he goes to the World Cup. Ideally, kind of like to 20. So this will be cap number 1. I'm sure he'll play against Georgia. I'm hoping we can get at least 4, maybe 5 caps into him this year. Same thing next year, maybe even a few more. And then in 2027, if he's a proper option, then hopefully he's going to a World Cup with 15, 16 caps to his name, and not sitting there with 4 or 5. So we've got to make some big calls when it comes to our front rows, given the current injuries. But for me, the most exciting part of Saturday is to see how these 2 front rows operate. We're known for having the best scrum in the world. How will these guys cope? Will these guys put us forward? Obviously, a big work rate's going to have to come from behind. Your Kubas Visas, Ruan Nokia, Sam Murat, and the likes. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve, and I'll chat to you soon.